to see everyone here. It really does remind me of the early days of Asian American studies. And so thank you for organizing this and thank you for coming. It's great. I think that the new policy raises three fundamental questions. First, how should public policy be made in a multiracial, multicultural democracy? Second, how will this new policy impact different segments of our society? And third, how fair is this policy? And how sound is it from an educational standpoint? So let me begin with the first question. How should public policy be made in a multiracial, multicultural democracy? UC has a simple answer. It says, UC says, we will make the policy for you because we know what's best for you people. That is why UC did not consult in any meaningful way before adopting this policy. UC did not consult with our political leaders, educational associations, community organizations, or civil rights groups. Or put another way, if UC had wanted to build a parking lot across the street, it would have had to do much more public consultation than what it did before adopting this policy, which would have a huge impact on Californians. UC would have had, if it wanted to build a parking lot, would have had to have extensive public hearings, invited expert testimony, filed impact reports, and heard things on appeal. But none of that happened with this policy, which is ever so much more important. Look at tonight's meeting, this meeting. This meeting should have taken place 3 years ago. And this policy will impact all of California schools and all of California students for decades to come. And UC said, here is what we are going to do, like it or lump it. Why is public involvement necessary? Because at the very least, if the public, if we were involved in the development of this project, we would have asked question number 2. How will the new policy impact different racial and ethnic groups? Now here, UC did extensive work. In fact, it outdid itself. Over the past 12 months, UC has made not one, not two, but 3 different predictions about how this policy will affect different groups. UC sold this policy on the grounds that it would increase diversity. But its actual projections told a very different story. It said that white students would win big. They would be up, and their admissions would increase by 20 to 30%. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders would lose big. Our admissions would decline by 11% to almost 20%. Blacks and Hispanics would remain about the same, though it's hard to tell because the numbers are small. And that's what they meant by diversity. Now this upset many people. Ling Chi, Henry Durr, Vincent Pan from Chinese for Affirmative Action met with UC and asked for more specific projections on how the new policy would impact admissions on each campus. Now Henry Durr wrote an op-ed summarizing what UC's prediction, and that op-ed is available, I believe. And again, the policy said whites would gain a lot. The prediction said whites would gain a lot, though not as much as originally predicted. Asians would lose a lot, but not as much as originally predicted. But African Americans would be devastated. That African Americans, the potential loss could be up to 30% or more. And by way of contrast, when Proposition 209 was implemented, the African American loss was 12.6%. So this policy, UC said, would have more than twice the negative impact of Proposition 209. Now that leads to another question. how could UC have gotten it so wrong? Now, all of public policy is about trying to make a better future, and an essential step in the development of all public policy is to predict its impact. Now, that's hard. Prediction is hard, and so it has to be just rough. And so, and that you can only look at a prediction to get not the precise impact, but the magnitude and the direction of the impact. And what UC's prediction said is it would have a devastating impact actually on all people of color. Now, how could it have gotten it so wrong? Now, I looked at the flyer for this meeting, and I think that the answer is in there. Under current policy, the top 12.5% of UC students, of high school graduates, are eligible for admission, guaranteed a spot. The new policy moves that from 12.5% to 10%. In other words, the bottom 2.5% is locked off. 1/5 of 12.5% is no longer guaranteed admission. My guess, though I haven't seen the data, and some people looked at it here, is that people of color, particularly underrepresented students, are overrepresented in that bottom quintile, that bottom 2.5%. And instead of being guaranteed admission, they now have to compete. And I think that's the impact. Now let me say, I know the people who built this policy, and they had no intention whatsoever of in any way damaging underrepresented students. But I think they just simply didn't think it through. You know, they kind of blinded themselves. You know, the framers of this policy are big on saying this is going to increase opportunity for thousands more students from every racial and ethnic group. A lot more African Americans, a lot more Asians, a lot more whites, a lot more Hispanics will be entitled to review, this new category that people have created. And yes, the playing field has been expanded, but as I'll talk about in a minute, it's not level. In fact, it's been tilted against people of color and poor people to a greater extent than the current policy. Now, I recently learned that UC has come up with a third set of predictions. And that says that the new policy will be racially neutral, whatever that means. Now let's pause here. UC, in less